Down all through this area here during the San Antonio Bay area, the South Shoreline, Cottonwood, Oyster Bayou, all this area back down through here, the Back Lake mouths, headed toward Panther Point, Panther Lake, all this area up in here, the back areas inside the lake, Swan, and all that area, all that stuff that we had a couple of days this past week where we had a big influx of water that came in there, so got the opportunity to take advantage of it. Timing worked out where we could get into some of these areas uh, on the back lakes, into the mouths, all those areas there. The big bunch of water that did come back allowed us to be able to do that. So, like I said, it only lasted for a couple of days, and then it kind of dropped back out again. But we did have a couple of days with extra higher tides than what we've had, so it opened up water for us. So we took advantage of that. I hope that if you were fishing same type of areas or somewhere close to this type of area, that you got to take advantage of it as well. Even down into Cedar's been pretty low for a while, but with that influx of water here, so we had opportunity to fish a little bit back into there. Didn't get as far as Twin, but you could have. Of course, this outside edge out here was pretty good as well. The baits that we were primarily throwing, of course, we're in amongst the big moon. We were heading up to the full moon. We're at the full moon now. We'll be on the back side of it by the time that this video posts. So make sure that you are aware of what's going on moon phase wise. So we were incorporating into our smaller profile baits. Remember that with the big moon in place, we were throwing smaller stuff. So primarily we were throwing burner shads and original size. In the down south, we were throwing pretty much the 4-inch and the 2 3/4 inch in the knock and tail. And then, of course, we were throwing the Little Johns, throwing those quite a bit. And then also the soft dines. So we just stayed small profile with everything that we had bait-wise, and we stuck with that pattern. Of course, color changes, and as far as our water clarity and stuff like that, we adjusted accordingly as far as our bait colors go. But as size-wise, that's what we stuck with, and that's what was most productive for us. Every once in a while we would put on a bigger bait just to see, and it wasn't quite as productive as what we would be getting with the smaller size profile bait. So that's what we stuck with, and that's what worked well for us. That's why I always continue to tell you that during those big moon phases or high pressure days, downsize that bait and let the fish dictate to you what they really want. So we just worked these areas, worked the little back lake mouths, worked the little guts that were in some of these little spots, and pull out a fish or two in each one. And some of them we would stay an hour or so, maybe not as long, because you could kind of tell, especially if there wasn't any bait working in there. That's one of the primary things. If you don't have bait working in an area that you're trying to locate, don't waste any time there. Or if you do spend it just a little bit, if it's not happening or doesn't look like it's going to happen, move on. Your time on the water, you want to make sure that you maximize the best opportunities in and around your majors and minors that you can. And once you're in between those time frames, then you just kind of want to maximize what your best fishing capabilities are and give the areas the best chance. So, like I say, these little mouths that dump out into San Antonio Bay are good. Like in Cottonwood, we'd like to get back in these little back lake mouths here. You can wade all this area all back in here. It just depends on how far back you want to go, how much time you want to spend in there. We threw some top water. The Lele was one bait that we threw in there that was pretty good, that worked pretty well for us. Than just traditional top water bait, Spook Junior, Mansfield Knocker, any of those types of baits, She Dog, He Dog, whatever you like. But it was always the smaller version of the top water bait. So, but we would catch some fish here and there, move down the shoreline, just kind of work these areas here, get back in Oyster Bayou and all that area back here. And these little mouths and the cuts and guts that work all this area back in this here. Just kind of work the shoreline, work the deeper edges of it best that you could, and kind of what the water dictated to you, let you know what you could and couldn't do. If you had, some of it was kind of skinny, but then you could tell that water was coming back for us, so we kind of try to maximize and time it to where that peak of that high tide was coming in there, so we could really kind of fish it the best way that we can. But again, the majors and minors did well for us. In between that, we just kind of scratched and clawed and tried to locate fish in and around those time frames, working these areas here. Came back out, worked around Ayers Point, worked in some of the little back lakes, walked into some of those. across the island right there and kind of walked into that and just kind of see if there were some of those little lakes that kind of are secluded back in these areas. So just another little option that we did. But again, weather set up really great for us this past week. It was really good. Had a lot of good opportunities here and there. Caught some decent fish, mostly trout and redfish were our the main species that we were targeting, but that's primarily what we caught. So I think maybe one flounder this past week, but that the main thing that we were focusing, and they were all pretty decent sized fish. Redfish primarily were in that 18 to 24 inch range. Trout were 14 to 18 inch. So it was all pretty good fish for the most part, especially if you were going to try to keep some. Those would be the good size to try to keep. And again, just a reminder, the new trout regulations will be coming up this coming week. So make sure that you mark that on your calendar. I believe it's the 26th is when that goes into effect. So that trout regulation now is 15 to 20 inches in 3 fish only from now on. So make sure you mark that and don't get caught with a couple extra fish that you're not supposed to have after the 26 kicks in. But anyway, just make sure that if you're getting to fish these areas up here or areas that are very similar to that you kind of work through. Still, the guts are still in play, still mud. We got some cooler weather. It looks like it may be coming. We'll see. But that's still primarily our fish have been holding out on those kinds of areas. Here on Long Reef Bend, we haven't spent a lot of time in these particular areas this past winter or here this early spring, but we spent a couple of days over here over the last 10 days to really kind of see what's going on with that. Again, the water fluctuation makes a big difference in certain areas. Long Reef Bend is one of those, and depending on the time of year it is. So if you don't have enough water and the right temperatures and stuff, some of your fish are just not going to hold in these particular areas. So we've kind of stayed away from it, just kind of periodically spot checked it. If it produced a few, then we would spend some time. If it didn't, then we would move on. We wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. But this past few days, we've spent some time on it and did okay. Fish are starting to kind of show back up in these areas. And again, it has with the fluctuation of the water, we had a couple of days where we had a lot of extra water that came in that we haven't had. And, of course, that water's dropped back out since. But still, if you're able to be on the water on those particular days when that happens, especially this time of year, you can really do yourself a favor and you can maximize your fishing opportunity and have a very productive time frame whenever you're fishing in those particular areas. So, again, it's a timing thing that you have to just kind of be there. But if not, then you fish the areas that you know and what you can do. So anyway, we spent this time on Long Reef Bend here. Again, it's got lots of great little back lake mouths that dump out to it. And again, with the bar out there, we spent a lot of time on the inside of the bar, not so much on the outside over the grass and the potholes in those areas there. And we would locate and find fish in there. So it wasn't just a fish every cast, but there were sections there, time frames, primarily in the major and the minor, whenever that time frame was this past week. That's when we maximize our fishing time. We would catch our most fish in and around that time frame. So, but when that would take place, it would be pretty productive for us and be pretty. Sometimes it was fast and furious for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and it would then start to kind of taper off for us. But we did get to take advantage of that, working some of these back lake mouths, kind of walking back up. And if you fish this area very much, that you can walk up into some of these back lakes, and you have some pretty good wading days back in there. So it kind of set up really well for us. Again, the weather's been great this past week, so if you're able to be out on the water at any point in time, please do so. Get out there and enjoy it and take advantage of those time frames like that. But again, we were throwing primarily nothing but smaller profile baits with the Big Moon, burner shad, mud minnow, twisted tea, Big Papa, white ice, bone diamond in the burner shad, and it goes also in the original size down south. We were throwing those same flavors, but one added flavor there we put was the Copperfield. That's one of my favorites, especially it's in that original size like that. It's a really, really quality color bait, and it's pretty adaptive to a lot of different flavors of water. For the most part, you wouldn't want to throw it in crystal or gin clear water, but that's where we kind of tapered off to our either the firecracker in the burner shad or throw the Little John in the golden red glitter and kitchen sink. Those flavors did really well. 16th ounce jig head on those, working that over those grass areas, over the pockets, fishing those areas like that, throwing that smaller bait like that really worked out for us. The knock and tail, we stuck with the heavy metal and greenback. Didn't throw a lot of the rogue flavor, and then of course the watermelon red in the smaller version of the knock and tail. And of course what I mentioned, I don't think we had anybody throw any soft dines on that particular days that we were over here in this area. So, but the plastics we were using were the primary baits, and they were the most productive for us that we had. Again, somebody would put a bigger bait on, throw a 5 or 6 inch bait, and then wasn't quite as productive. Maybe catch one fish off of it, and then kind of flip back. And once you put back on that smaller profile bait, your productivity went back up to a certain degree. So we could tell that's what they wanted. That's where they wanted it to be size wise. So that's what we stuck with. Again, majors and minors, always try to focus your fishing trip in and around a time frame of that when that it is. We got the minor rising and the minor setting. With this big moon, we're trying to focus on the early morning sessions up till about 10 or 11. And then if your opportunity to get back on the water in the afternoon, and probably an hour and a half to 2 hours before that moon starts to rise again, and then fish it till a little after dark, and to maximize that catching opportunity in those time frames. But again, pay attention to what your weather patterns are going to be, because we're in that kind of volatile time of the year, the spring, where it can kind of get kind of wonky on you and kind of be everywhere. So enjoy your time out on the water, and try to be as productive as possible whenever you go. Shell Point all the way around, Turtle Pen, this whole area back in here. Really great little area. It's kind of sneaky good type of thing. So, if you get back in here on this back shoreline here on Turtle Pen, or kind of as you head back the little cut that goes back into Copano Creek back in there. We didn't get all the way back to the back, but we fished primarily out here in the front. And so you've got a couple little back lake mouths that are over here in this little corner. Really muddy up in the mouth and past the mouth, so you may be aware of that. But we stayed out front where it was very manageable and found some fish out there. You got nice little grass flat that's out there. Of course, you get on this other point on the other side here in Turtle Pen. There's all this grass that's out here. Located a few redfish that were hanging out on some of that area there. That was the one bait, the lele I mentioned earlier. That lele did really well back up in these areas on top of that grass flat. Of course, the particular days that we fished here, or the particular day that we fished here, there wasn't as much water as what we had taken advantage of down there in San Antonio and over on Long Reef Bend. So with that water being out a little bit less, so we kind of went to something that's more the surface bait wise. So, if you wanted to throw the Spook Junior, if that's what you had, or the lele, and the lele did. And the lele's, like I say, it's a smaller version of the bait. It's like a 2.5 inch bait, 3 inch bait at max. So it really fit our profile for the big moon. So it did well for us. Really erratic bait, works really well. You can kind of bang it down just above the grass, and then it ascends and it comes right back up. It's a lot like what the Double D does. The difference with the Double D, though, profile wise, we continue to kind of get hung up in grass with it because of it not working it quite as well as we needed to be. So the lele kind of took that guesswork out of it and kind of get that cadence right so you could stay where you needed to be, and that's where our productivity came. We got opportunities with that. But coming back around here to the little cut, nice little back lake mouth that's back in here. Fished the mouth of that, fished up in the mouth a little bit, just kind of worked our way around over the grass edges and just kind of worked all those kind of little potholes that are in here. That grass is really starting to come back, which is a good sign. Hopefully our springtime is going to be even better and better as we transition. As April's coming up, and of course we've got May right behind it. It looks like our weather patterns are going to stay pretty much in the 60s for the most part over the next several days. Looks like we may transition up into some 70s possibly, but we will see how that kind of works out for us. But opportunities are there. Again, your key things that you want to look for is bait working in your area, and then trying to focus in on a incoming or outgoing tide if you can. And then, of course, obviously, the majors and minors. So all that kind of stuff kind of plays into effect. So if you can put all three of those things and stack that kind of stuff in your favor, you're going to give yourself an opportunity. And that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for opportunities that we can stick a few fish here and there. Primarily, we were catching trout. Like I say, we caught a few redfish in here, but most of the thing that we pulled out here were trout. Nothing great. They were all in that lower slot, especially the new slot. A lot of them are hovering around that 15 or 16 mark, some under 14. But that was primarily size that were in there. I think maybe pulled out one or two that may have been close to 18 or 19. But The redfish were in the lower slot as well. No big bruisers that were in there in that upper slot or anything, but it was primarily, again, the 18 to 22, 23-inch redfish, which are fine. They're fun to catch, and if that's what you want to try to keep, and those are perfect ones to take home to eat. But anyhow, just work these areas in here. Be really patient with it. You'll find yourself just kind of looking and locating, and once you locate those fish, just kind of check yourselves against when the major and minor is, and give yourself the best opportunity in here. Again, just pay attention to what your water levels are doing. Weather's, again, is going to be a key factor for us. It always is. So don't want you to get yourself caught out there, so make sure you're being safe about it and paying attention to it. But again, get yourself out on the water, have a great time, and enjoy yourself out there.